She may not make it. So welcome to week 6, everyone. You have reached the end nearly of Seeking Shalom. So today will be very practical, as we'll be engaging a significant amount of time on a real life case study. The Church of the Epiphany has agreed to be our guinea pigs and to think about their ministry in depth, which we'll all have a chance to learn more about when we reach about midway through class tonight. But as we've done in weeks prior, I'd like to begin with our homework. Hopefully some of you had a chance to look at the case study for this past week, which was called, what was it called?
Moving to Clifton.
Moving to Clifton, yeah. I knew it was Clifton. A different kind of case study in that it asked you to imagine you had the opportunity to start from scratch. Well, not scratch in that obviously stuff's been going on in Clifton, but you're new to the community and you yet have not gotten involved. So I'm just trying to find the right page number to tell you. It's on page 118. So I'm curious, what would you do and where would you start?
I would start with something social, some activity that people from both communities could participate in. I guess it would have to be initiated by the people who live in Clifton who want to get to know the people who live in this underserved community. Because I don't think the underserved community is going to call them up and say, "You need to come over." So, but something relatively mild, non-threatening. And then, I don't know, it could be like a community service project. It could be that, although that has implications. Or it could be pizza. Just something to do together and see what develops.
How about a block party?
That's a good idea. Those are always fun. Yeah. Food and some music.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is agenda number 1 is just getting to know people,
Yeah.
building relationships.
Yes, because you don't know until you do that.
Thank you. Great. That would be a great way to start. Other thoughts?
This is Ben. I was thinking that one thing would be to identify community partners, leadership in the community that you could potentially work with to get an idea of what the community needs most.
Yeah, because the hypothetical case study points out that there are existing entities that have been around for years, and yet, quote, it appears that these things have not made a significant impact on poverty in the area. But they exist.
Yeah, I would ask the people in the underserved community, or one person or two, how they feel about life and how they feel about these people who are attempting to serve them. They may resent them. They may be resisting or something. I don't know, but.
Right. Richard, this is Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, welcome back.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, the last letter, the last sentence you read, I think is very important because it doesn't specify how they know it's not made a significant impact on poverty. It's not defined. And as the last person who just spoke in my community in Herndon, Virginia, for example, we had a poor Black community that was literally wiped out because of a change in the county line. And they took out the school and they took out things back in the 1950s, and the entire community was destroyed. But they were a poor community, a happy community. They've been there since slaves after the end of the Civil War, but they were destroyed because of a line, and Loudoun County said, well, we'll just bus you all to Leesburg, 15 miles away. And the entire community was destroyed, but they were happy, but they were in poverty.
Yeah.
Relative to the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with including and speaking to the local community-based organizations, because there's so many reasons why, systemic reasons why they maybe have been doing things the way that they have, because we know the kind of organizations are less likely to have resources to do the things they want to do, to have just general operating resources. So I think we can't make assumptions that this person potentially did. It's important to get to know the people and the local community-based organizations.
Yeah, we may find that some in those organizations may have a lot of leadership authority in the community, despite the makeup or the resources or the governance, or I like your point that you made, Lois, about not making assumptions and being curious. Paula, you're trying to.
Well, I was going to say, just in reading it, I think it's important for them to get to know the people, and you have to gently walk into the community to develop the relationship. And then as everybody was talking, I was just trying to figure out what made them think they were in poverty, or, you know, how do you decide if people are in need of something or unhappy or in poverty because they appear to have less income, or they don't dress like you, or, you know, there are a whole lot of things when you're dealing with people. Some people are happy with new underwear for Christmas, where you have other kids, they want an iPhone. I mean, so it's just what you're used to. So I think all of it comes to, with him driving through, he needs to develop a relationship with the people he assumes are in poverty. You know, they're not doing exceptionally well, but you know what their attitude is. And also he's going to have to deal with those people that have been providing services. You know, how did they come to know what they need, you know, and try to mesh the two together, I would think.
Paula, what you said is so important, I think, because to kind of apply the principles from our class, what you're saying is that rather than come in as a newcomer to the neighborhood, and maybe there's implied racial differences here, don't assume that you have gifts and answers to bring to the situation, but come with humility and curiosity and wanting to understand and build relationships as a newcomer, and hearing, as you say, firsthand, and recognizing that the members of the existing community, who in the eyes of the case study are impoverished, have their own wherewithal. And our whole curriculum has tried to redefine poverty, not about lack of material goods, but about a lack of access to the networks of support that make self-flourishing possible.
Yeah.
I was going to say, as to support what Paula said, in addition to knowing and meeting the persons in the community, also learning who the persons are who are in, I call them power positions, but not in that sense, but who are the representatives, who are the local community leaders, who are the influencers in that community, in addition to what Paula said. And then you have a rounded picture of what exists, who the persons are and the players are who possibly can make changes to that in a systemic way. And I'm talking about the organizations, the political people, you know, who are the businesses, if there are any, and the people too, which is exactly what Paula said. You have to know what the people think themselves. What are their needs, and what have they tried, or are they trying to do anything? You know, what is it that the community really wants?
also important. Glenna, were you going to say something?
I was. There's a lot of implied things in this scenario. Already you're really an outsider because you've moved into a community and you're in the posh part of the community. So and we haven't even begun to talk about ethnic differences, whether or not you speak the same language, all of these things. And if I were to, one thing I learned in Baltimore, I was working in Park Heights, which has suffered systemic divestment, government divestment. Anyway, I went to somebody's apartment one day and I was invited over, and it was a pastoral call, and they pulled out a lawn chair for me to sit in, and they sat on the floor, and I was like, oh, okay. And they had a mattress. So I said, would you like me to get you a bed? Would you like some chairs or a table? And they were offended. And they were like, no, Reverend, or they call me Mother Glenna. No, Mother Glenna, we have everything we need. And I was like, okay. So I had to really check myself and to remind myself not to impose my norms of what's necessary for thriving. Because in their they had food and they had shelter, and that's really what was absolutely necessary. And for me to be attentive to what they called me over there for. Another thing I learned in Park Heights was, those folks live there. And lots of people come in, they called us do-gooders. They come in and you're there for a while, you're there a couple of years, and then you go. And there's a certain level of trust. It's not like, hey, come on in and let's hang out. So to some extent, people what I found is that folks already have a really good defense mechanisms in place in order to survive, and may see you coming and say, sure, it'd be great to have sidewalks, or yeah, we need the lights to be on at night, or it'd be great if you could help get the city to come plow regularly, right? That was one thing. The city never plowed in that area. Street light lamps were never replaced. So really talking to folks. And the first thing I would do, if I moved into Clifton, I would get out of my car, ride my bike over or walk over or take the bus, and find out who the elder is outside in their yard. At least that's what I did in Park Heights. I went up to the elders who were out taking care of their plants. And I would say, hey, you have a really beautiful yard. Can you tell me about, I don't know, whatever flower it was? And then people would start talking. So whatever the shared interest is, if there's folks who are already gathered outside, who are willing to invite you into their space.
One word jumped out at me, and it's the word homeless. You really have a community of people who have food and shelter, and they're being helped with, rent and whatnot. It doesn't say anything about the homeless people except that they have children. So these are not the people that come to the shelters that I've worked in, which have mostly been single or partnered adults. But we don't run a shelter for this. I'm talking about what my church has done. It's not for children. The county of Fairfax houses families with children in, lovely flea bag motels and things of that nature. But where they know about homeless families, they're not on the street. We don't know what we've got here. But that's a different ministry in a lot of ways than people who are impoverished but have a home. It doesn't say whether they live in a tent city or whether, it just doesn't say. It says homeless people send their kids to the school. So that's a lot to learn before you know what you can do.
And also, persons who are unsheltered, there are so many classifications. Some of them are sleeping on other people's couches, some of them are in shelters, some of them are in tents. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and some of them are in temporary housing or in special programs. So again, even that, I'm learning in this last month or so, even that quote unquote terminology doesn't apply the same way to everybody.
No, that's very true. There are a lot of categories.
Yeah, and it's,
you
you
know,
know,
and we throw the word homeless, and that's all they've done here. Is
Yeah.
just throw the
Yeah,
word
just throw it in there.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so we really don't know what that represents.
right.
And normally they have to have some fixed address to go to a school in most areas.
Yes. And that could be part of, Paul is correct. And many times I'm learning that happens by an agency or an organization, a church that allows the person to use that as an address. So for us, as an example, Paula, someone who is unsheltered would use St. Luke's address as the place that they receive their mail. And in the district, by the way, you don't have to have an address. It's a very different way. I learned that recently as well. One doesn't have to have an address. One has to have a place where one receives mail. But an address can be the corner of 15th and R.
Yeah, we have
Oh,
over
interesting.
700 students in Charles County that are considered homeless. And most of them don't have addresses. We have an organization here that provides a PO box for
Yeah.
the homeless.
Mhm, mhm.
To connect this conversation to the principles of Shalom, the complexity of the experiences of people who we classify as homeless raises the whole distinction of crisis versus chronic, and the diagnostic error of knowing really what is the situation that's being faced. Episodically homeless is different from chronic.
Yes.
And last week we looked at, over the course of the past several weeks, we've been looking at the 5 principles of Shalom that the class is offering up. And last week we looked at the 3rd and 4th, which were holistic, and that Shalom engages the mind, holistic and mind. We were encouraged to go beyond single issue approaches when responding to material poverty. We are also encouraged to leverage people's experience, knowledge, and expertise, not just our compassion, when we invite them to participate in our ministries and our programs. If you've had time to reflect on this, why do you think those two are essential in seeking Shalom?
Not to make light of it, but if we go in to look at, well, we're going to fix the water, or we're going to fix the street lights, it's sort of like a game of whack-a-mole. Might help with one, but there's going to be something else that pops up that presents a problem.
That's a great image for holistic. Yeah, the whack-a-mole.
It sounds like what they've already been doing. And they have a clothing closet, they have a food pantry, they have public assistance for transportation and rent, and they're piecemealing it, possibly very well. We don't know. I mean, it's not like these are useless things that they're doing, but
yes,
there's no evidence that it's coherent or that it's cooperating among different organizations. I don't know.
Well, I think you all have done a great job analyzing this, yet again, hypothetical scenario here. I'd like to invite us to turn to this week's content by looking at the overview page on page 126. Could I ask someone to read the key idea, please?
No.
I can do it.
Please.
To seek shalom means that we are not content with simply alleviating suffering. We want to see real, lasting, and meaningful change occur in people's lives and in their communities. In other words, seeking shalom means we have to care about impact, not just activity. Shalom means measuring more than the things we did with good intentions. Shalom means measuring what those actions have accomplished.
Thank you, Susan. Can someone read the learning objectives?
I can do it. Participants will come to understand that healthy models and will measure impact, not just activity. Participants will practice diagnosing a charity model using the core concepts learned in Seeking Shalom. Do you want me to read the rest?
Someone else could read the rest, please.
Okay.
Measurement question is huge, and it has to be dealt with. Our hearts, minds, and the money will follow what we measure. So we have to stop measuring brokenness. Seek the shalom of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it experiences shalom, you too will experience shalom. Jeremiah 29:7.
Thank you. So this series has asked us to shift our thinking away from meeting needs or from alleviating suffering to a model that seeks shalom, which is this word that works towards sustainable or holistic well-being, that flourishing, that abundant life that Jesus talks about. By definition, this means that we care about results. And that brings us to our final principle for the class, which is impact. Impact. I think there's, fill in the blank, 120, page 127. Seeking shalom means we want to know that the work that is being done, the resources that are being leveraged, the partnerships being built are all leading to a measurable impact on people's lives, right? The traditional needs meeting paradigm tends to measure activity, right? How many things were distributed, how many volunteer hours were worked, how many number of people were touched and served. The curriculum is suggesting that this different paradigm will measure impact, not just the activity. So we're going to watch our first video of the evening about this notion of impact. And there is space to take notes on page 128. Reminder to turn up your volume and mute yourselves, please.
There seems to be a growing interest or a growing habit to measure success by how many activities we do and how many, we track numbers. Here are the number of people that were involved in this activity. Therefore, we are doing, good work. And some of those things are good. Sadly, that's normally where we end.
When I think about measuring impact versus activity, when you're paying attention to not only how many sack lunches you handed out or how many clients came through the door, how many did you successfully serve, go back a few years later, go back a few months later, find out where they are now, how the access to the resources that you gave them has been able to support where they are in the next couple of years or the next couple of months. So just going back and figuring out, the agencies can figure out exactly, again, how well what they did helped in a few months or a few years down the road.
FCS has never been an organization that measures all of our activity per se. We aren't counting our volunteer hours and counting how many people have been fed and those types of things. We are really looking at the community as a whole and what is the impact our work is having on the community. And so we are measuring much larger indicators.
The measurement question is huge and has to be dealt with. And I don't want to hear the argument of you can't measure love, you can't measure compassion. We're doing things that aren't quantitatively available. So here's some thoughts. One is there's two kinds of measures. One is program measures. How many programs, how many people, how often, how much did you spend? Okay, the other is population measures. How is the population doing? And so you see people measuring now well-being. The old measures measure brokenness. So if I say in this neighborhood, who we used to call a poor neighborhood, okay, what do we measure now? Infant mortality, how soon do the kids die at birth? Life span, how old are they living? When do they die? When do they drop out of school? How much crime in there? How fat are they? How much diabetes do they have? How much crap food? Those are all brokenness measures. Money will follow what you measure. Mind and heart will follow it. So we got to stop measuring brokenness. And which means we need a whole alternative category of measurement, which is either wellness, but more vitality. So how many businesses do you own? What do you know how to do? What do you love doing? How have you used that? How much do you trust your neighbors?
As essential as the intangible things are in healthy ministry, like compassion, grit, and vision, if we are going to have lasting impact on the challenges we face, then metrics matter. But we have to learn how to measure what matters, to be honest about the legitimacy of our measurements, and have the willingness to course correct when we are not seeing meaningful results. Our friends at the Atlanta Mission have in recent years been leading their organization through a major paradigm shift. They model for us the courage and wisdom it takes to admit when we are measuring the wrong things and to shift from measuring activity to measuring impact. We now turn to Daryl Russ, the Vice President of Men's Services at Atlanta Mission, for a spotlight on what it means to measure impact.
Probably about 5 years ago, we made a decision to really change the model that we use here. That decision was based on many factors. The previous model really was one size fits all. It really was like a pipe. You come in on one end, everybody gets the same thing, and they come out on the other end, and hopefully you got what you needed. The model truly didn't give us the outcomes we were looking for. We had great stories, but they were very limited. And it worked for some, and it didn't work for others. Essentially, you may have 30% that might come through, and they truly were living independently. We wanted a model that would increase that success rate, to be able to measure that. How are you doing as it relates to living independently? How are you doing about maintaining a sustainable wage? And truly, how are you doing? Are you connected with the church? Are you connected with others in the community that can provide services to ensure your success? So that was really the focus. So we want to higher outcomes. Sadly, in the old model, we were truly measuring graduation. How many people were able to make it through that year-long program and actually graduate, and that was the definition of success. Today, success looks radically different. Individualize and customize what success looks like for me and what it looks like for another individual. Maybe a little different. We do a needs assessment to determine what your needs are along 5 areas: physical, emotional, spiritual, social, and vocational. What are your needs? What's the benchmark within each of those? Okay, now we understand what your needs are. Let's create a personalized service plan and create goals to help address the needs that you've self-reported. That is a complete paradigm shift. So now we are exclusively focused on what you have defined as success for you and based on your needs. So now let's build a plan. Let's put licensed clinicians in front of you and social workers. Let's put a team around you for your success. So around each client is going to be a counselor, a social worker, a client advocate. If you have children, you have a children's social worker and a vocational training manager, exclusively working together to focus on you meeting your needs, those that you have expressed to us. We're looking really at building these personalized service plans So right now we're in really early stages. We just completed this new technology platform that gives us the capability to actually measure progress. So we're really excited now. So as of today, we're gathering that data. It's a privilege to work here. I love being here, and I have the best seat in the house. I get to see miracles every day. And here's the funny part, they actually pay me to watch miracles happen.
It's a beautiful testimony. We're going to process that together in our small groups. And there are discussion questions for you to work through on page 129. You're not going to get through all of them. So just upfront disclaimer. You don't need to, but see what you can get through in 7 minutes. So we'll take 7 minutes to talk about the questions on page 129. Welcome back. Hope no one ever gets vertigo when you're moving around in the rooms. As Peter Block said in the video, he was the guy who was a little rough around the edges, who the quote comes from earlier. He said that in the video, our hearts, our minds, and our money are going to follow the things that we measure. Our metrics will define the boundaries and set the trajectory for the work that we do. We can't go on measuring activity and assume that we will create impact. If we want impact, we have to name the impact we want and measure it in ways that will get us there. I'm going to look at some scripture together on page 131. The participant's guide conveniently has all of the passages spelled out for us. I'd like to take turns reading those passages. Someone could start with the Isaiah 65.
Isaiah 65, 17 to 19. See, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. But we be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create. For I will create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people a joy. I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight in my people. The sound of weeping and of crying will be heard in it no more.
Thank you, Paula. Could someone read the Matthew 6? You need to unmute, Kathy.
This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one.
Thank you. And there's another passage from Matthew 19.
I'll do that one, if that's okay.
Thanks.
Matthew 19, 28 to 30. Jesus said to them, truly I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first.
Thank you. And Luke 4.
I'll do it. Luke 4, 17 to 20. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him.
Thank you. And the Ephesians can bring us home.
And he made known to us the mystery of his will according to his good pleasure, which he purposed in Christ to be put into effect when the times reach their fulfillment, to bring unity to all things in heaven and on earth under Christ.
Thank you. These passages describe God as this supreme deity who is reconciling, redeeming, restoring, renewing. All these words imply that something is changing. God is not into busy work, but God is into transformation and change, longing for creation to become all that it was intended to be. We say as Christians that we live in the in-between time, meaning in between the two advents, the advent of Christ's incarnation and the advent that we await, Christ's return. And while we wait, we're not off the hook. We've talked about the idea of being co-creators with God. God is not absent from creation. God is not absent from our lives or from our community. We're not simply waiting for the end to come. God is actively working every day, right? Wherever the oppressed are resisting evil, wherever the community of faith is celebrating the bread and the wine, the kingdom breaks through, right? We have these glimpses. Already is God's reign among us through Jesus. And yet, not yet is it fully realized. God is actually working every day among us that the kingdom can come as we pray every day on earth as it is in heaven. So impact is something that matters to us. It matters to us on a daily basis. You don't want your doctor to simply be satisfied with counting how many pills you've been prescribed or how many hours they spend visiting with us. You want a doctor who's committed to ensuring that we are going to heal. Same with the mechanic. We don't want to be satisfied with counting how many hours of labor they put into our car or how many people touched it while working. We care that the car gets fixed, right? Unfortunately, in the traditional charity paradigm, we too easily become satisfied with measuring involvement and activity because, and I'm right there with you, we feel good about it. We lead with that Christian compassion to want to make a difference, to want to provide meaning. But this seeking shalom approach is challenging us to work for real, lasting, meaningful impact, not just activity. So another video. This one's going to bring home all 5 of the principles that we've looked at together. And there's space in your books to take notes in each category, beginning on page 132. So the 5 principles we've looked at have been mutuality, participatory, holistic, engaging the mind, and tonight we're looking at impact. So I invite you to take notes as we watch this animation.
Switching the paradigm from meeting needs to seeking shalom was no small thing. It required all of us to create a completely new set of commitments. The first commitment we made was to mutuality. The focus could no longer be on our deficiency and their wealth. We had to face our collective need for community. We needed one another, regardless of income level. Reciprocal relationships, not transactional charity, makes flourishing possible. This pursuit of mutuality is breaking down the us-them created by charity. We are listening to one another, learning from one another, and experiencing the blessing of belonging. The second commitment we made was to ensure that everything could be participatory. Dignity, not deficiency, is the lens through which we want it to be seen. Our assets are the catalyst for flourishing, not our brokenness. We are working to make sure that everyone's gifts are involved. from how the challenges are defined to how solutions get envisioned to how success is measured. Our third commitment for seeking Shalom was to be holistic. We knew we needed a more robust version of where we are going, and how to get there. We knew that simplistic definitions of problems and piecemeal solutions would never empower our community to thrive. Shalom is comprehensive, and our methods must be as well. The fourth commitment everyone made was to not just lead with our hearts, but with our minds as well. Real and lasting change in our community would require professional expertise, business acumen, due diligence, and best practices. We were confident that by combining sincere compassion with sound strategy, our community could flourish. The fifth and final commitment we made for seeking Shalom was to measure impact, not just our activity. As good as it may feel to measure all resources that can be given away, we wanted to instead have an index for flourishing, a metric for Shalom. Success for us was in seeing lives transformed and my community restored. We refused to settle for anything less than that. It has been a challenging journey sustaining this change. I hope you will join us in moving beyond meeting needs. Let's begin seeking Shalom.
So with that, we're not quite half through, but I'd like to go ahead and take our break early so that when we get back, we're gonna engage with our case study for the rest of the night about the Church of the Epiphany's welcome table. So let's take 5 minutes, which by my clock brings us back at 6:26. They're pretty substantial. So you're gonna have 30 minutes in your group to work through all of the exercises. But before we go there, I'm gonna ask Glenna or someone she delegates to read the case study for us so we can hear about the welcome table. And I've gone ahead and shared the one-pager document in the chat box so you'll be able to refer to it when you're in your groups. I think Glenna was indicating she needed a minute.
Sorry, yes, I just need one moment. Richard, do you have?
You want me to do a screen share? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if I can make it larger.
Every Sunday morning since 1995, the Welcome Table Meal Program has provided 200 chronically homeless individuals, mostly men, with breakfast and a range of activities. The Welcome Table makes no claims to solving the homelessness crisis, but offers radical hospitality, a necessary part of respecting our neighbors and allowing them to cultivate the inner resources to rebuild their lives. The program offers a non-judgmental space for physical and spiritual nourishment, creativity, and community. Although the Welcome Table is more than a meal program, the food is what initially draws in our homeless neighbors. Our current menu includes eggs, grits, meat and veggie sausages, and fresh fruit. Volunteers circulate around sit-down tables with hot pots of coffee, and guests eat from china rather than disposable plates and cutlery. There's no shortage of food, says Rector Reverend Huber. It's dignity we need more of. These details, while small, are practical ways to restore a sense of humanity to our guests, something they do not often experience outside of our walls. Beyond breakfast, we offer gospel art, our art program, toiletries, an opportunity to sing in our welcome table choir, and a worship service. While food and toiletries are essential for survival, the other aspects of the program give a sense of humanity back to our guests, recognizing debilitating mental illness and addiction, or providing a space for creativity are just as essential to our mission. Many of our guests suffer from PTSD and profound mental health issues. And while it is beyond our power to fully restore them, we meet them on their own terms, help them to feel worthy, and make referrals to other organizations and agencies when necessary. Sunday services take place in our grand sanctuary with natural light pouring in through stained glass windows and filling the air. Welcoming the homeless into our parish, regardless of their religious beliefs or background, acknowledges their spirituality. Prayers, both requesting and celebrating housing, employment, and medical care, are frequently heard during the service. The welcome table has provided a reliable source of food and community for over 20 years. Epiphany will continue to provide a welcoming space for a decent meal and human connection as long as these services are needed.
Thank you very much. I want to give all of you who are hearing this, and particularly those who are not, okay, Susan, those who are not Epiphany DC folks, to ask any clarifying questions that you may not understand, or any more information that you would like before we begin diagnosing the welcome table. Any questions for Glenna or her Epiphany colleagues?
This is Ben. I have a question. Is it a daily program or weekly or what?
Weekly.
Weekly, thanks.
And this is just Sunday morning, a couple hours once a week?
Correct.
What's the turnover? How many people are the same every week, and how many, new people? What's the relative balance of regulars and?
I would say that there's a fair number of regulars. There's also a fair number of new people. So there's a total, on a regular Sunday, you might see 250 folks at this point, pre-pandemic, and maybe 75 are returns. A lot of it sort of in the more recent years depends on who's in the shelters. The shelter bus was dropping off folks. So if the people who were regulars are folks who have known us, that does not necessarily mean that those who are participating are all unhoused.
Any other clarifying questions?
So how many people each Sunday turn up? You're talking about hundreds. You don't have 100 people at a time, do you?
No, it's the doors open at 6:30, and between 6:30 and 10:30, there's about 250 people come through.
That's a lot. Wow.
Yes.
On a rotating basis?
Yeah, how many? I think we can seat like 80 at a time. So people go to service, they sit in the sanctuary, they wait till their number is called, they come in, they eat. Sometimes, if we have a formation class, some folks go to formation. There's an NA meeting, some folks go to the NA meeting. Some people take their food and go.
Interesting. Okay.
Great. So the idea is that you can refer back to the document as you work through the exercises, and they begin on page 134. But I'll caution you to just keep moving along. You might not answer all of the exercises, but hopefully you'll reach page 140 which is the end, that gives you a chance to reimagine the welcome table, if you choose, applying the principles of Shalom to reimagining any modifications that you would make, a different vision for the welcome table. And to inform your analysis, there's some initial, warm-up questions. What was your initial reaction? What seems to be most promising? What concerns you the most? And then on page 136, you have all of the principles, and you can discuss the questions to rank the welcome table on a scale of 1 to 5 in each of the principles. And then have some conversation about, well, what might you do differently? Does anyone have questions on your instructions? You can always hit the ask for help button. Rowan and I will be hanging out as you do your work. And it is, let's round up, 7:38 now. So let's take till 10 after in your groups. We'll come back and share with one another. Oh, and each group should be prepared to highlight in particular what things you affirmed and celebrated, and which things needed the most attention. And then if you had a vision for changing it. Alrighty?
When you say affirmed and celebrated, does that correspond to specific questions?
That corresponds to perhaps question number 3 on page 134.
Thank you.
And whichever of the 5 principles you rated particularly high, perhaps?
Thank you.
Yep. So go ahead and accept your invite to go to your rooms. You'll have 30 minutes to work through these exercises. Ruth and Patrick, you need to accept the invite. I'm going to work on some emails and the class evaluation for this.
Sounds good. I'll keep an eye out.
But Could you beam folks a 5-minute warning in a couple of minutes, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you get my note, Richard? I sent in chat. I was supposed to start the choir rehearsal, and then it was also.
Oh yeah. From earlier, yes. No worries. Oh yeah, that's classic. It all comes at once. But thank you for offering up the case study. Okay, welcome back. Did someone drop off? I think we had 14 earlier. Oh.
Diane is gone now, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not sure if that was intentional or not. Paula, are you trying to tell us something? You're muted.
No, I was saying Diane, oh, I'm sorry. Diane went off when we did that first break.
Oh, she had to leave? Okay. Well, welcome back. How far did you get? Did you have enough time to work through some of the exercises? So I'd love if we could hear from each group a little bit about what you noticed in your initial hearing about the welcome table. And of course, some of you know it well, and you were in groups too. So what things were able to celebrate about the welcome table? What things did you feel were areas for improvement or that needed attention? Is someone prepared to share? How about I'll call on groups? Okay, Ben, go for it.
Okay, so there's a focus on hospitality, and it seems to successfully create a positive environment for the participants. And there's a strong sense of trust and welcome, and that the people who do participate in the program, some of them return on a regular basis and have friendships and a sense of community that has developed there. And there are opportunities to provide a variety of services beyond food, like artwork and other types of service, like faith, services, Christian services, and that's what I have. Thank you.
What about Anne, Paula, Ruth, and Susan?
Well, just we said some of the same things. Having the AANA meeting is valuable, as well as the gospel art and the Bible study. We have a robust group of volunteers, and the 7:30 activities are open to all participants.
And the third group, which I think was Glenna, Elsa, and Anne.
The only thing we would add to that is respect, that there's a lot of respect, mutual respect. We agree with all the other things that people have.
Why don't you retain the floor, Glenna, and we'll go in reverse order. Did you talk about any of the 5 principles that needed more attention?
Yeah, well, we had high ranking for all of them except for mind and impact. And because we're good Episcopalians, we went via media on that, which is probably about 3.5. Okay. We really kind of discussed impact, but the claim of the ministry is not to eradicate homelessness, or to eradicate or alleviate poverty. the Welcome Table lives into its mission of creating hospitality and respecting the dignity of all who come.
Yes. Anne, what about your group?
Well, I guess we measured it against a tougher standard. So we came up with 1 for each of the 5 principles, because I mean, well, as Glenna said, it lives into its mission, and its mission is not to eradicate poverty. So
if I could add to that,
yeah,
it wasn't so much of living into its mission, but we kind of felt like, and Anne actually shared a story where one of the volunteers went to give breakfast to somebody, and somebody said, well, you could at least say good morning. And so that was kind of we were talking mutuality, was we felt that everything was low, that there could have been more interaction. We asked about the congregation and whether anybody ever went in and sat down and talked with people, not necessarily to have breakfast with them, but just to talk and listen to them. And I run a soup kitchen, so I understand that mutuality and the sitting down and talking and making sure the person feels the dignity, you know, and not to be point fingers, but just serving them on china doesn't necessarily give them their dignity back. It's talking to them and treating them like a person, and treating them as a person instead of an it or a that type thing. So that's kind of where we felt that one of the reasons we gave it all 1s was kind of the needed to bring stuff up.
Thank you for sharing. Ben, what about your group?
For mutuality, we gave 2s and 3s. We felt there was a moderate level of distinction between those who are coming through the program and those who are serving. Participatory, 1s, 2s, and 3s. The people who are coming through the program had a low level of participation, but notably, some additional information that led to some of our 3s is that some of the guests do volunteer. And so that led to some of the 3s. For holistic, we kind of disagreed with each other. We had 2 2s and 2 4s. I think the 2s were, if I can summarize, were focused on the idea that there was not a strong attempt to address a societal problem necessarily. And the 4s were thinking about that there were multiple issues being addressed by the program besides poverty issues. And we talked a little bit about the narcotics issues and some of the others. For mind, we gave 1s and 2s. We felt that there was not a strong level of professional skills being applied in this case. And for impact, we all agreed on a 1 in terms of measurements of effectiveness.
Ben, did your group have a vision for any changes or a different model?
Minimally. We didn't have a lot of time on that one. But one comment was made that an important next step is to figure out what the needs are for the community that's being served. Because currently the program does not appear to be, and it says in the statement that was read before we started the exercise, that it doesn't necessarily have a strong connection to a particular societal problem. So figuring out what needs are there could help address the potential proximity disorder.
Thank you. How about back to, well, who wants to share next? Anne, you want to? Did your group get to discuss any a different model or changes?
We didn't get that far, but not formally. Does anybody have, I think some things came up. Did anybody have suggestions about things that might be tweaked or? Yeah, we didn't get that far.
No problem. Glenna, what about your group?
I think, well, our group was all Epiphany folks. So, you know, that's going to change the parameters of the conversation. And we talked a lot about post-COVID, you know, what happens next.
Yeah.
So,
well, to all of you Epiphany folks, what are you hearing, if anything, that's helpful?
Well, I'm hearing sort of a fairly accurate assessment of what we do. And I value what we do. But I said in the little group that I've been thinking all day about the difficulties of figuring out how to take an existing program. And in some ways, you know, COVID is going to help on this because there will have been a significant break in what we do. And so it's a good moment to approach changing it. But you have the people who come to join us on Sunday morning, and you have the people who volunteer on Sunday morning, and each and every one of them will have a view. So it's a lot of process. That's what I'm thinking about.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity to just open things up to figure out, and I've been grappling with this over the last few weeks, figure out how do you create that opportunity for discussion that is truly inclusive, especially right now when we can't be face to face, and just to have that conversation and folks talking about what needs are, what people have to offer, what people want and need. I think it'll be a great discussion I've been feeling for a while as we started into the pandemic. And so things had to be different, that we need to be open to doing something completely different or addressing a need that maybe isn't obviously related to what we're doing right now if we truly take advantage of this opportunity.
and then, you know, I think it's all very helpful to hear, you know, a critical perspective of a much beloved program, right? That something that it's interesting to hear critique around something that the congregation uses as an identifier also. Like this welcome table is integral to the identity of Epiphany. And to change that, what does that mean? What does that look like? Who's benefiting? Like these are all excellent questions. When the change happens, who's grieving? What does that grief look like? How do we attend to it? And are we addressing that which we want to address? Are we still being hospitable? And I think it's part of my role is to help in seeking shalom. All of this is to say, okay, yes, people need food. But what we say is we want to create an atmosphere, a community of radical hospitality. We want to provide avenues through which people can be holistic. We want to be in relationship. These are the words that we say we value. How do we still meet immediate needs, still do direct service as needed, but really hone in on our values, which is relational respect, that kind of stuff, spiritual. vocational, and we don't have to do all 5. We don't have to do all 5. Which one is most valuable to us, maintains the integrity of the program of Welcome Table, lives into our mission, and hopefully I think the next step, I hope the next step for those who are in conversation is creating agency, providing people agency to do that which they are called to do. And so if making sure that you have Bible study, food, and a bathroom on a Sunday morning gives you the strength to get up on Monday and stand in line somewhere or fill out the paperwork that you need to fill out, then let's do that. But we don't want to create dependency. And that's a fine, nor dependent, we the servers don't want to be dependent on having to be of service to people. And we don't want folks to be dependent on us in the same way. It's not all articulate, but.
I would quickly add too that to me, the value we bring isn't the food we provide, because there are lots of people in that general area, or at least there were pre-pandemic, providing food. It was the other stuff. It was the fact that people felt so welcome. They could just come and just chill. As I said in our group, sometimes too welcome. But I think that said a lot, that they felt so comfortable and welcome and comfortable. And then those other things that we provide, I think that's our great value, much more than the meal.
Yeah, and not just the principles of Shalom, but remember the big wheel, the flourishing neighborhood index, which you can apply. Oh, look, I just happened to flip to it. It's on page 106. Faith community is one of the social indicators on the Lupton Center's Flourishing Neighborhood Index. Neighborhood connectivity, sense of place. So it seems that our programs that are singularly focused on symptoms, which perhaps on a surface level, one can look at Welcome Table critically, or at the ministry at my parish called Charlie's Place, critically in the ways that it addresses single symptoms. But there are, when you have this nuance of being a faith community itself, and I know when Glenna shows up in other clergy contexts, she counts the guests of Welcome Table as parishioners, right? They are part of the parish community. And so there's a lot of nuance there that's distinct from, say, just your average homeless social services charity organization. And I want to thank our friends from the Church of the Epiphany for being willing to let us all analyze and scrutinize the Welcome Table. On Sunday in the class that I teach for St. Margaret's, we did that for Charlie's Place, and it was not easy, right? It's an important thing to take a step back and assess, in particular on this question of impact. Also at Charlie's Place, a 30-year beloved program. We had to take a step back and say, is these number of meals that we counting, is that measuring impact in people's lives in a changed kind of way? So we're actually beginning an assessment process in partnership with the Lupton Center to reimagine Charlie's Place. And they have many more resources if Christchurch Rockville or St. Luke's DC or Epiphany in Virginia, I forget where you are, Ruth, or in Maryland, Susan, if there's more resources available if you want to engage these philosophies more concretely and practically. Gosh, time flies. So we are at the end of our time for tonight, so we should wrap up. We'll pray
Richard,
together.
can I ask a question before you conclude? You just said there are more resources available. Are you implying that there might be resources available from the diocese, or what are you referring to?
No, I'm just, I'm not a salesperson for the Lupton Center, but they do consulting. So if you're interested in, having a handheld, whether that's bringing them to come present a one-day seminar about all this to your congregation, or Or you could take this Seeking Shalom class and you could be called to lead it in your congregation. You can sign up, you can talk to the folk, you can talk to me. I'd be happy to help you get set up in doing that if that's something you'd be interested in doing. You've done it now. There's a leader's guide that I've been using that corresponds with your participants guide. So having gone through the class now, you'd all be very prepared to then share this with others in your context. So that's an option that would be at minimal cost. But if you're looking to do a kind of deep assessment with help from some outside experts, that's what I meant in terms of, and they also have many other classes on their website portal, which you can sign up for a membership and you get access to all of them, or you can do a la carte, the different classes that would appeal to you, and you can do your self-learning, through those online learning modules on your own pace. So those are some options that I would commend.
I appreciate that answer.
Yeah. Any other wrap-up questions, comments?
Just thank you for doing this. I don't want to throw away the good things in our programs that we're doing to try to meet some new standard. But on the other hand, it's nice to have the input of new ideas and new ways of looking at things. We can always, I can anyway, always use another viewpoint, because I get set in my ways because I'm that age. And I need my eyes open sometimes. So this has been a nice eye opener on certain ways of looking at what we're doing. So thank you for
saying that, Ruth.
providing the course. Thank you for being here, for doing this.
Yeah, and I'm learning right alongside y'all, believe me. And I've learned a lot from you and your context and your experience. I will be sending an email with a link to a class evaluation. I'd value your feedback, both about the curriculum and about my facilitation. So look for that tomorrow, or I want to send one email with the recording of tonight for those who missed it and the class evaluation. So as soon as I have the recording from Jennifer, I'll share all that in one email to you, hopefully tomorrow. If not early as soon as I can. But I'm grateful. I'm really impressed with the creativity, the thoughtfulness, the honesty that we have all brought to this experience over the past 6 weeks. And I'd like to end where we began by affirming, just 1 second, by affirming that all are made in the image of God, that we are all made to be in relationship with God and one another. We're all made to co-create with God and contribute to the flourishing that God desires for us all. And in short, we're made to seek shalom together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lena, did you want to say something?
Thank you.
Yes, but it's not as beautiful, which is why I wanted to get it in there before.
Oh, sorry. I was on a roll trying to get my closing words in.
Thank you. The only thing I would highlight, one thing I would highlight is that I don't think that this particular curriculum really takes into account or doesn't explicitly name the role that race and class plays in all of this, all of it. And so if you were to look at work by Brian Stevenson or examine some other, Rachel, I don't know, there's a lot of books and I don't want to take up too much time, but race and class are, and gender, right? Play some really significant roles in how we do this work. And I continue to sort of be challenged by the fact that the Lupton Center does not highlight that. They're in Atlanta, but I'll take it back.
Yes.
Did not go unnoted.
Yes.
True point.
Thank you for mentioning it. I know we're over time, but I'd like to close with prayer. So may God be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving and merciful God, we commend to you this time of learning. We ask and trust that you will take our imperfect offering, all that we have discussed and debated and questioned, been inspired by, challenged by, confused by, that you'll take it all as an offering and you will use it and shape it and help it grow and help it bear fruit. We ask your blessing be upon each of us. We give thanks for the sacrifices of other family and friends and time and connections that we have let go so that we can be present here on Thursday evenings these past 6 weeks. We give thanks to all who made that possible. And we ask your blessing upon all the ministries in which we are involved. Give thanks for the people of the Welcome Table, the Church of the Epiphany, for Susan's church and Ruth's church and Patrick's church and Ben's church, and St. Luke's DC, and any that I'm forgetting. Pray that your guidance and your spirit would continue to inspire and ground the ministries of compassion that exist in all of our contexts, and that you might help each of us in our time and through your wisdom to seek these principles of shalom. As we begin our Lenten journey, help us follow the one whose way of love is also the way of the cross, and in whose baptism we participate in death and also resurrection. Through Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen. Good night, everybody.
Good night, y'all. Have a holy Lent.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, everybody.